All right, we're on the last video. We've done all the skin, all the contouring, all the highlighting. We've done the eyes, and now it's time to do the lips. I want a matte, but a little bit frosty lip. How does that happen? I'm gonna show you. So as always, we're gonna start with a clean, dry lip. I like to take a little bit of a washcloth and rub. I was doing alcohol for a while and I don't recommend it. It dries it out and I found it actually didn't hold as long, but I find that just rubbing it with a dry washcloth ahead of time makes it last all day, and sometimes I'm really scrubbing it off at the night. So we're gonna start there and make sure you get your waterline too. And just get all the makeup off you might have gotten on, dry them off. All right, so we're gonna start with that. I'm gonna do that one more time before we start, but first, I'm using a mixture today of blue, red, and plumeria. Now I can layer those, but I don't want to layer them. I wanna get a custom color that's 50-50 instead of in thirds. So the way that I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna pre-mix these. So you take your color and you can scrape it onto something. Some people mix these on the top of like their shadow, one of their, well, what do you call this? On the top of their tinted moisturizer bottle. I used to do that, but because I have stuff to do samples, I have these little tiny pipettes and a little sample cup here. And so I like to squeeze it directly into there. So that's my blue red. You can also do this like on a piece of plastic or on a palette or on a piece of foil, whatever works for you. And then I'm gonna do the same with my plumeria, clean pipette though. Right in there. And this just allows you to get a little bit different color than you would get if you were just layering them. And it can also allow you to mix more than 3 colors if you wanted to. I've seen some people get some super fun colors doing this, which is what made me start doing it. And then I'm just gonna take a clean lip applicator and mix them together. Scrape it off because you're gonna get more of one color if you don't do that. And then again, we're just gonna clean the lip and apply it like normal, 3 thin layers. All right, you can see I got a little overzealous over there, so I'm gonna go in with some oops and clean that up in a minute. You can already see that's a super fun color. I'm gonna line my lips a little bit. All right, now I colored a little bit outside of the lines. This happens. So I'm just gonna grab my oops and fix the little place where it's uneven. That's the only place. All right, just confirming. And then just wipe it right off. Oh, what mistake? There was no mistake. What oops? All right, time for a second layer. You really wanna let this dry all the way to ensure that it lasts all day. I realized that I was sometimes not even letting it dry and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't lasting all day. And then the bottom lip. And I've decided to kind of overdraw a little bit because I'm going for a more dramatic look. All right, we're gonna let that dry. All right, and go in for the 3rd layer. So Plumeria is a frost and Blue Red is a matte. So they kind of work to tone each other down. The Blue Red tones down, sorry, I'm trying to let them dry all the way. The Blue Red tones down the frost in the Plumeria, but the Plumeria punches up a little bit the Blue Red. And that's why I like these as a look together. And I just want to make sure I've got a defined Cupid's bow here. There we go. So I like the way that these two work together. I'm gonna let this totally dry, and then what I'm gonna do is I wanna use matte gloss, but I find that matte gloss works best with a thin layer of glossy underneath. This may sound counterintuitive, but here's why. Our matte is not our most hydrating gloss. It's got hydration, but it's not the most hydrating gloss. And so for me, I find that I like the way matte feels more if I have a little bit of glossy underneath, and I find it lasts longer because my lips are more hydrated. Some people like just the matte gloss. I'm just not one of them. Whenever someone buys a matte gloss, if they only are using the matte gloss, I always throw in a couple of samples of glossy with it, just so that they can see how it feels to use both. This is still drying a little bit, so we're gonna let that dry and then come back with it. So if you don't totally let it dry, what you will find is it will start to crumble about halfway through the day because it didn't dry all the way through. So if you're finding that your LipSense gets a little bit crumbly halfway through the day, just try letting it dry a minute longer. Sometimes what I'll do is I won't put on my mascara until after I've done my lips so that everything gets a chance to really dry before I do that. So at this point, it's pretty dry. I think it's all the way dry. And so I'm gonna do a thin layer of the glossy, and then I'm gonna go in with the matte. Now, the other thing that I have noticed is that I use matte in the morning. If I use glossy the rest of the day, the matte, whatever's in it, mattifies the glossy throughout the day. So I can hydrate with glossy if I'm feeling a little bit dry. I also find that my colors last longer when I wear matte because I'm not as tempted to rub my lips together, which can break down the color. So thin layer of glossy, getting all into the corners, your whole lip. This tube's running a little low. All right, so I've applied the glossy. You can see it's not super, super glossy, so I could go with this as a look. I wanna go a little bit more matte for what I've got going on tonight, so I'm just gonna put a thin layer of the matte on. Now the matte at first might seem a little bit shiny. It's gonna mattify pretty quickly. Get it everywhere. So that's just gonna take a minute to kind of dry and become a little bit more matte. You can see it starting to work, but that's the complete look. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message, and I hope you all have an amazing holiday and feel as glamorous as you wanna feel.